Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to the State of this Economy podcast. I'm your host S. Ronendra Singh, and in this episode of the podcast, we are going to discuss about the automobile industry. As our guest, we are hosting Mr. Hardeep Singh Brar, who is the Senior Vice President and Head of Sales and Marketing at Kia India, who says the year 2024 has been an average year in terms of growth rate over last year, primarily because of the government's investments not being there and also a bit of IT layoffs. However, next year is going to be much better and is expected to grow anywhere between 5 and 10%, primarily with government investments coming back and also IT layoffs behind us. He also said that monsoons next year are also expected to be better in 2025 from what was unpredictable in 2024. Therefore, if these three things fall in place, growth rate next year would be much better. In terms of segments, Mr. Brar said the SUV category that had a strong growth rate in 2024 with more than 50% will continue its growth momentum, while hatchbacks and sedans will continue to degrow in the market. In terms of electric vehicles, he said that the EV market has not grown as expected. It was 2% last year and it is still about 2.2% this year, and the hybrids have overtaken the EVs. So if the country needs to give a long-term impetus, some kind of subsidies are still required, whether it is at central government level or at state government level. So without any further ado, let's start the conversations.
Welcome to Business Lines podcast, Mr. Brar. To start with, we are talking about the year end also, and what expectations do you have from the year 2025 in the automobile industry?
2024 has been relatively an average year in terms of growth rates over last year, primarily because of the government investments not being there, also a bit of IT layoffs. But I feel next year is going to be much better than this year. We expect more than 5% growth rate, primarily with government investments coming back and also IT layoffs behind us and IT industry again getting back into recruitments. And also, I think one big factor which is unpredictable right now are the monsoons. I think this year were great and we expect it to be good next year as well. Mm-hmm. So if these three things fall in place, I think anywhere between 5 to 10% could be the growth rate next year.
Okay, but still in single digit. But as you compare to this year, 2024, which started with a little bit of slow growth, but towards the end it was pretty much higher in terms of growth, especially in the festive season also, where we have a record year selling so many passenger vehicles. So do you think that similar kind of situation will come in 2025 also?
I think it should start on a good note. I think you're talking about the financial year,
yes.
Right? So financial year, yes, from financial year perspective, because elections just started. So April to September was quite weak. October bumped up, but November was weak again. So if you take September, October, November combined, because there was an overlap in the festival versus last year, the growth rate was only about 1%. Mm-hmm. December also doesn't seem to be very big, while absolute numbers are going to be good. But I think I'm going by the Vahan numbers, the registration numbers which are going to be there. So I think April to December, if you will see, I think it'll be maybe at max 1 to 2% growth.
Right.
Yeah. But I think from next quarter, the growth should start coming in because of the factors that I mentioned.
Right. What about the SUV segment, where we have seen so many growths happening over the last 3-4 years? So do you think that will continue? And how about the other segments? Do you think that will also cater to the market? For example, sedan segments are there, then some premium compact cars are also getting launched.
Yeah, I think the SUVs are growing. To give you an idea, so last year SUVs about 50%. This year they have gone to 54-55%. Mm-hmm. MPVs were about 8%. They have grown to about 10%. So both put together are now today about 63 to 64%, which is a big percentage. Mm-hmm. So I feel, and if you look at the growth rates of the compact and the mid SUV, they are very strong. The compact SUV this year is growing at 17%, and the mid SUV is growing at about 12.5%, against an average growth rate of 1 to 2%, which shows how strong the SUV segment is. Mm-hmm. And as a result of this, the hatchbacks and the sedans are actually declining. Okay. So from both of them put together, beginning of the year, they were about 42%. Now they have gone down to about 35-36%.
Okay. And on the policy side, the BS6 OBD2 is will be coming in April 2025. So, do you think the companies are prepared for that? How is the industry preparing for that?
Yeah, I think so far industry has been able to meet the norms whichever come the way. So I don't see that as an issue.
What about schemes like, in this year we saw 2 schemes for electric vehicles, the EMPS, then we have continued the PM E-Drive, but we haven't seen much for the passenger electric vehicles in that. So, do you think the government should do something about that in 2025 too?
Yeah, I feel so because if you see the EV market has not grown as expected. It was 2% last year. It is still about 2.2%, and the hybrids have overtaken the EVs.
Right.
So I think if we need to give a long-term impetus, I think some kind of subsidies are required, whether at a central government level or at the state level. For example, while the GST is 5%, but a lot of states are still imposing full road tax and registration on the EVs. And in those states, the sales is impacted because the price parity doesn't come otherwise. Right. And in the states where the EV policy of zero registration road tax is there, they're doing quite well.
Like in Karnataka, there was news yesterday that they're increasing the road tax.
So that will again impact. For example, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have dropped, and suddenly we can see the spurt of EVs in those markets. Okay. So that's very critical for the overall adoption of EVs. Yeah.
The GST Council meeting is also around the corners, and there were some bad news coming in, like the government might not continue with the 5% GST for electric vehicles, and they might increase for the other vehicles also, ICE vehicles also. What's your perspective on that? And what
I think that'll be very detrimental. First, coming to EVs, as I mentioned, the adoption rate is already very low, and there are anxieties in the consumer mind so far as EVs are concerned. And if we increase anything beyond that, there'll be a big impact on the sales. Coming to ICE, in any case, I think India has the highest rate tax across the globe, and if we increase it any further, that will only have impact on the sales. As you see, the average growth rate of the car industry is about 5%, and GDP growth is much higher than that. So I think it's to do with the taxes and accordingly, and which is why, while India is considered to be a relatively cheaper country when we look at all the commodities across the bucket that we have.
Right.
But moment you start comparing the car prices with the rest of the world, we are higher than them.
Right. Yeah. Lastly, on the industry's preparation for the alternate fuels, like government keeps talking about ethanol blending and also flex fuels and also hydrogen fuel cells. Yeah. So how is the industry shaping up in 2025?
I think everybody is. I think we are specifically prepared for E20. We are E20 compliant, so that's not a problem. But I think we need to put a focus single-mindedly on certain fuels, right? I think flex fuel and EV is what we should focus on because now imagine EVs have not reached to the potential that we spoke about, and there's a lot of investment which has gone into EVs. Now suddenly, if we start talking about fuel cell EVs and hydrogen, etc., I think we will again derail the EV story that we were talking about. I think let's first make this one successful. Flex fuel is a good move. I think let's stay focused on this before we start exploring any other fuel at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much. Thank you.